I've done Marco's favorite thing in the entire world.
You've bought something?
Well, yeah, so it's both your sarcastic.
It was a sarcasm.
I meant it as sarcastic, but it's actually also genuine. I did buy something, which is Marco's favorite thing. But your least favorite thing is that literally 50 minutes ago, I basically tore apart my entire desk.
Oh.
So if any of this recording works and/or if I sound even remotely decent, success. But who knows? If I sound like garbage, it's not Marco's fault. It's not John's fault. It's my fault.
Blame the third-party RAM.
No, it's not third-party RAM. Not this time. No, just this evening, I finally received the shipment of the CalDigit TS5 Plus that I had ordered a couple of weeks back.
Ooh.
And I am very excited. I have only used it for a few minutes, and my initial review is it's just like the TS4, but with faster Ethernet and a few more ports.
Wait, but so you didn't really change anything. You just swapped out one component with the component that it does the same job made by the same company with one bigger number at the end?
Yes, but it doesn't sound as dramatic that way, John.
All right. Well, we'll see how dramatic it is. All I can say is you sound fine over Zoom, so worst case scenario, we can use that backup track for you.
That sounds good. No, I mean, initially, it seems like it's pretty nice. Like I said, there seem to be a few more ports in the back. There is gigabit Ethernet, which is exciting, or excuse me, 10 gigabit Ethernet. The TS4 had 2.5 gigabit Ethernet. That being said, I did a quick iPerf3 speed test between the Synology and my Mac. And it was not as impressive as I would have hoped, but I wouldn't be surprised if I have old wires between me and my Switch. Oh, actually, and I might not even be on. No, I think I am on a 10 gigabit port on the Switch, but nevertheless, I have some playing to do, but I didn't have time before the recording. But yeah, initial results are this extraordinarily overpriced, well, maybe not overpriced, extraordinarily expensive, costly, is that the Merlinism? This extraordinarily costly CalDigit dock is very nice. And I might be reselling my TS4 to a local friend, but if not, and you're interested in one, feel free to reach out.
So have you considered the possibility that the Synology hard drives can't actually serve
I have
1.2 gigabytes per second?
I have. And that's a very, very good point. I don't think I have anything else that's 10 gigabit at the moment, though. Like my Mac Mini is an M1 Mac Mini. It has just straight up gigabit, 1 gigabit Ethernet. I guess I could. I'm struggling to try to theorize a way I could do this test any better. And I agree with you that the hard drives may be the issue here, not this Synology.
Yeah, like if you put like some kind of, I mean, I'm sure there's some Synology app that basically is like, a network performance thing where it just sends data, from nothing over the internet or over the network.
I think you can just do that with a shell script yourself if you want.
I thought iPerf3 did that, but I don't know enough about it to know one way or the other. So I am talking outside my comfort zone at this point. But yeah, I got to fiddle with it. And again, it could be any one of several different things. It could be the hard drives are too slow. They're like 7,200 RPM hard drives.
I don't think that it's the hard. If you're doing sequential reads from a giant media file with all, especially in the initial speed, when you do it a couple times and it gets into like the caches and everything, I think you should be fine. I think you should be able to.
I don't know. I mean, you're talking about, again, 1.2 gigabytes per second being read off of a collection of ancient hard drives that are in some kind of RAID arrangement. And, any RAID that does not include, a 1 and a 0 is slow, very, very slow. And so it would not surprise me if actually all of these old, presumably SATA connected hard drives can't actually deliver 1.2 gigabytes of streaming data over the network.
Yeah, I forgot that you don't have any RAID. Even your backups aren't RAID 0. I think we've talked about this before.
They used to be in the 8-base Synology, but I don't think I'm even doing Time Machine. Or if I am, no, that's what it was. I'm doing a single standalone hard drive, if I recall correctly, as Time Machine, and so there's no redundancy or striping or splitting of any sort.
Oh well.
So yeah, this is breaking news. I have testing to do. This could be cabling. It could be the fact that my tests are flawed because of what I'm testing against. There's so many different issues here, many of which start and end with me. So I don't think a story of my life for sure. So I'm not clear what the weak link is, but it's probably me. But yeah, I mean, the chat room is justifiably and thankfully not in a rude way saying, well, why bother go from 4 to 5? I don't have a good reason. This was a little bit of a Marco purchase, especially since it is $500. It is a lot of money. But the good news is I had already spent money on a plane ticket to WWDC that I ended up getting refunded. So I had a credit on my credit card. So that makes it free, right?
I'm not sure that's how money works, but okay.
No, that's exactly how money works. Come on, Marco, defend me here.
That's like business write-offs. They're just free, right?
Right. But either way, I really wanted 10 gigabit Ethernet so that, I can go between the Synology and me faster than I was before. And rather than getting a bespoke 10 gigabit Ethernet, I was going to say card, but I guess thing, I can't think of the word I'm looking for. Anyway, so dongle adapter, thank you, etc. I just upgraded the CalDigit. And it is worth noting that I'm using this, and this could also be another part of the problem. I'm using this on an M3 Max MacBook Pro, which is Thunderbolt 4, and everything is working, but there is not as much bandwidth as it would have if I had
it's fine. That's 40 gigabits. Right.
I would think as well, but also I have 2 different 5K monitors connected to it, et cetera, et cetera. So many of these problems could be me. I think what I'm already hearing, though, Marco, I hope you picked up what I was just putting down. The only solution to this problem, the clear answer to this problem, is to upgrade my MacBook Pro when the M5 comes out. That's the only answer, right, Marco? Because I need that Thunderbolt 5 action.
You can get a Mac Pro, so you can hook up the 2 5K monitors to the Mac and not worry about it taking your bandwidth. It's got a dedicated 10 gig Ethernet
there
port.
You go. Yeah,
someday when they release a good Mac Pro.
I mean, you also get a Mac Mini that has 10 gig Ethernet.
That's very true. Exactly. But anyways, so far, 2 thumbs up if you're willing to spend an extraordinary amount of money on something that in my case is marginally frivolous. But hey, here's what we're going to do. I put an affiliate link in the show notes. So all of you can buy one and then I'll get like $1 from each of you. And if enough of you buy it, I'll be rich. That's what we're going to do.
So after this amazing review, you spent $500 to sort of maybe increase something a little bit.
That's exactly right. I do have more ports. It really legitimately does have more ports.
Future proofing. He won't need to buy the 6.
Right.
It's like $100 per port though.
Stop it, Marco. You're supposed to be on my side, remember? You're getting this all wrong. Anyways, let's do some follow-up. And last episode, John and I did a review of F1 the movie that stars Brad Pitt. We talked about that in the post show and a little bit in the bootleg as well, or overtime or something. I forget exactly where it was.
It was the bootleg. A couple people asked about that because I said I was going to talk about spoiler stuff. We didn't do it in overtime. I did it in the bootleg. So there you go.
Exactly.
If you want to get all the bits, the bootleg has everything.
I believe it's pronounced boatleg.
Oh, please.
Yes, indeed. Yes. But anyways, one of the things I forgot to bring up last episode was Apple's rumored F1 deals. So let me set the stage. With Formula One, ESPN, which is a sports network that's based here in America, and pretty much every cable package includes it, or most cable packages include it. They are the carrier of F1 in the States. However, they just basically regurgitate, I believe it's Sky Sports from the UK. So they take the UK feed and just blast it out through ESPN. And that's been the case since I've been paying attention to F1 for like 5 years now. Well, reading from, I think this is Mac Rumors, forgive me, I don't have it in front of me. Yes, Mac Rumors. Apple is expected to win the rights to stream Formula One races on Apple TV Plus in the United States thanks to a $150 million bid, Business Insider reports. The rights to broadcast Formula One in the United States are currently held by Disney's ESPN. According to sources familiar with negotiations, Disney is apparently unwilling to match or beat Apple's offer. It pays, Disney that is, pays around $85 million per year for its current rights, just over half of Apple's latest bid. I think this is really interesting and really exciting. As someone who's already committed to Apple TV Plus, I think this is great. If I wasn't committed to Apple TV Plus, I would be very grumbly because that's another subscription I would potentially need to do. But it is worth noting a couple of things. First of all, I pay for and subscribe to F1 TV, which is Formula One's own streaming service. which has always been pretty good, but has gotten really good in this season. What makes it really special now is that when you're watching on like the Apple TV, for example, you can not only have the main race feed, but you can additionally have like 2 or 3 other feeds. So you can have like the race feed and then your favorite driver and someone who's, your favorite driver's enemy or something like that off to the side, is not literally picture in picture, but, kind of an accessory screen, or like Jason Snell's multi-view that he's always talking about and so on. And so that's really great. And that's, I think, $80 a year, if I recall correctly, or it's a season for the standard version. It's like $120 for the fancy version I was just talking about, where you get the multi-view. And also for the 6 of you that happen to be Vision Pro owners, Vroom is an incredible app that I don't think is available anymore. It was only ever available via test flight, but you could hook up your F1 TV credentials and log into that and get like an in-space multi-view. So imagine what I was just describing, but more little rectangles and all over the place. You could get a 3D view of the track and where the cars are in the track. It is phenomenal. I'll put a link in the show notes to a Reddit post that does a really good job of showing a like video of how this works. It's really, really great. And that worked via F1 TV. And then finally, last episode, I spoke about a immersive Vision Pro thing where you got a ride along with Brad Pitt. And again, immersive means you can twist your head and you'll get a different view and so on and so forth. And I conflated that, I think, in the last episode with John's video, which, John, remind me what you had brought to the table?
It was Brad Pitt getting to drive a real F1 car by himself. In a non-movie capacity as the actual just person Brad Pitt, and it was on YouTube. I think it was released around the time the F1 movie was released, so it's not. It's pretty new, or at least it's newly posted to YouTube. So I didn't know that it wasn't the same thing as you were describing, but I had just seen it recently.
Yeah, and I've since watched that because I don't know how I missed it, but I didn't know it was a thing. It's like 20, 30 minutes, and if you're into Brad Pitt or F1 or anything like that, I freaking loved it. I thought it was delightful. We will put the link in this show notes. And then the immersive ride-along thing, unfortunately, there's no direct link to that immersive video, but I'll put a link in the show notes to something that if you have your Vision Pro on, if you scroll down on what I link to, you can find it there, but I can't link you directly to that video.
Apple hasn't discovered how links work yet. They'll figure it out eventually.
Do you think there's anybody listening to this right now who is currently, as they're listening, wearing a Vision Pro?
No.
But I think there are people listening who own one.
Yes, definitely. And the immersive thing is all of like 5 minutes, but it's delightful. It's really, really cool. And it gives you a real kind of feel for what it's like to be in an F1 car. It's really great. John, is your toaster still really great? Because what I have in our internal show notes is John's toaster update, and I'm nervous.
Uh-oh.
I think it was last episode where I talked about my toaster that I got as a gag gift in 2011 at WWDC. That turned out to be an amazingly good toaster that I kept for 14 years that just started going a little wonky, so I replaced it with the same model of toaster that had a couple of improvements. Well, since then, there have been developments. First is I did actually try to buy a spare part to fix the old toaster, only after removing 8,000 screws that hold my old toaster together and getting at the part. And I was about to remove it. I realized, the replacement part that I bought to replace it with is not exactly the same. The little connector is different. I guess I could have cut the wires and spliced it together, but they seem to have like heat resistant shielding on it. And I was like, nope, not going to do that. Not going to try to splice wires inside the toaster. So I just put the 8,000 screws back in and put it back together. So that was a bummer. But anyway, the real update is that my brand new toaster, when I was in the kitchen, I think I was cooking something on the stovetop, but I wasn't using the toaster. No one had used the toaster for hours. Suddenly, the new toaster started going beep, 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 beep. At first, I didn't know where the heck the beeping was come from. It didn't sound like a smoke alarm beeping. It was just like a computery beeping noise. I'm like, what? I don't have what in the kitchen could possibly be making that noise? And then I looked over the toaster because the screen had come on. And on the screen were the letters E01.
Oh, no.
That's not good.
So I looked that up in the manual. And in the manual for my toaster, it says, the LCD screen will display E01 when there is a non-resettable issue with this appliance. Should this occur, immediately remove the power cord from the wall outlet and call Breville customer service. So I did. Actually, they were closed. I had to wait the next day. So I did unplug the toaster, and then I called Breville customer service the next day. I was trying to navigate the phone tree, and I'm on hold, as you are. I was calling on my iPhone. And it said, by the way, if you don't want to wait and listen to this hold music, you can press 1 and we'll give you a call back. I'm like, yes, I totally want to do that. So I brought up the keypad and I pressed 1. It didn't work. And I tried it like 9 times. It said,
oh no,
press 1 if you want to call back. And I pressed 1, it didn't work. So I gave up, hung up, called on my landline phone, pressed 1 there. It worked fine. Eventually I got 2 callbacks from them. But anyway, their system was a little wonky. They did call me back, which was nice. And I said, hey, it showed E01. And I always forget about that. I've talked about it multiple times in the show, but every time it happens to me, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the age we live in. Do you remember when I had like the wonky Microsoft mouse and I said they wanted me to like send a video of it being broken?
Yeah.
We're in the age where all customer service people know that you probably have a way to take pictures and video immediately and send it to them. And so they're like, why should I waste my time believing what people say on the phone like we used to in the old days when I can ask them to prove it with cameras and video? So this time they had like, they SMS'd me a link to a web page that asked to use the camera to like, they wanted like live video of it. And here's the thing. I knew because I had unplugged it. Well, first thing it is, I unplugged it and plugged it back in, and E01 was still there. Then I unplugged it, left it unplugged for like an hour and plugged it back in, and E01 was gone. And everything seemed to work fine. But I'm like, well, whatever. I'm just going to leave this thing unplugged. So I knew what the deal was. But I'm like, well, if you want to see video, all you're going to see is me plug the toaster in, and it's going to appear to work fine. And so sure enough, I did. I videoed. I plugged the toaster in. At this point, it had been unplugged overnight. I plugged the toaster in. It appeared to work fine. She had me do a bunch of test things. And yep, see, it seems to work fine. And basically, the only reason I was calling is like, look, the manual says unplug it immediately and call customer service. So that's what I did. So I was like, why does it say that? Is it going to catch fire or whatever? And she's like, well, if it seems like it's working fine now, it should be fine. No, it won't catch fire, blah, blah, blah. So if I die because my toaster burns my house down, send them this podcast. Because they told me, and I asked repeatedly, so is it okay for me to keep using this toaster now? Like, yep, totally fine. Plug it back in. Seems like it's working fine. You can plug it back in. It's all good. If you see the error again, you can call us back. So and I haven't seen the error again. We've used the toaster all the time, multiple times a day, and it's been fine so far. But anyway, this toaster is on notice, and I still have the old one in the attic that has been unscrewed once and put back together. I don't know what the deal is. There, again, if you Google for this, lots of people have this E01 and various theories about what it might or might not be. But I haven't seen it since, but I'm keeping my eye on it. And then, by the way, I got, I said I pressed 1 for the callback. Eventually, the iPhone callback thing worked too. Like I pressed 1 and it said that they would call back. So I got 2 callbacks. One of them I did the whole rigmarole with. The other one, I just said, someone else already called me back and I got my issue sorted out. Then today, they called me again and said, hey, just checking in. Were they checking to see if my house had burned down? I don't know. Just checking in to make sure you don't have any problems. Like, nope, problem has to... So mixed review for Breville customer service. They actually call you back, which is not always true of Apple, by the way, because I've done the callback thing on Apple and not gotten a callback many times in my life. I have gotten the callbacks many times in my life as well. But anyway, Breville is, 100% on they will call you back. And I didn't even know they were going to call again and say, just check in and everything's fine. So there you have it. My new replacement toaster. Not sure what the deal is. Maybe he was just nervous about being in a new house, but we'll see.
Yeah, I had to do that customer support video link thing on my phone too. My Fios went out, and I had to call Verizon. And the thing with Verizon is Verizon Fios. That's their name for their fiber optic ISP to your home. Verizon Fios is amazing once you get it working and once it's hooked up. You never have to interact with Verizon unless something breaks. And in this case, it only broke after, 6 continuous years of service, which, okay, not too bad. However, when you do have to contact Verizon, it's terrible. Verizon has possibly the worst customer service I've dealt with in a very long time in terms of just
Xfinity has entered the chat, sir.
Oh, okay. Fortunately,
it's a real race to the bottom between those two titans.
Yeah. Yep. Talk about unhelpful people, very, very long hold times, 2-hour hold times, very long hold times.
Trying to upsell you at completely inappropriate times.
Oh my God. Oh, totally. But they also did the same thing. It's probably using the same service where they texted me a link, just like John was saying, they texted me a link to this web app that used the camera to stream video live to them, which I kind of I kind of felt a little bit uneasy about that, to be honest. I'm like, if I knew that you were going to make me stream video to you as I walk through my house to show you the router and the utility closet and everything, I'm like, maybe I would have like cleaned up the house a little. I don't know. Like it felt very invasive.
Like I don't mind the invasiveness of it, and I'm not against it. I think it does actually. Like, let's cut to the chase here. We have the technology. We should use it. It just surprises me every time. Like especially in cases where if I just say like my thing showed E0, like they used to before they had the ability to do this, they would just believe what you said, which obviously is a downside because people would lie to them. But it also saved time if you're telling the truth, and I'm telling the truth about what happened. But anyway, like I in cases like Fios things, I think I would probably find it helpful. But I have lied to Fios in the past, back when they used to be real angry if you weren't using their equipment, and I never used their equipment, like their router or anything. But these days they're way more chill about that.
Yeah, the whole like, show us a video thing, I can see why they do that, and I can see why it might work well in a lot of cases, but it feels a little bit skeevy to me. I don't know. I don't love that.
Yeah, there's totally some giant cache of the inside of everyone's houses recorded on some website that's insecure. Like the same way that like people getting access to the accidental like Siri activations and stuff. This is absolutely happening with all those apps, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I haven't had to do this in a long time, thankfully, as I knock on wood. But I know that my time will come. And I mean, because we moved to this house in 2008, so it's been almost 20 years. And I think I've spoken to Verizon Fios customer service twice, maybe thrice.
Once you get it working, you never have to deal with them, which is good because dealing with them is the worst.
Well, I mean, so the in-house stuff is great, but like, for example, if a tree falls 2 blocks over and, breaks the fiber optic cable running to your house, you would think that's like, well, they know about that, right? They'll fix it. I don't have to call. You probably have to call and going like trying to convince them or convince yourself that it really is the tree that fell and broke the wire. Like that's the problem, not, oh, you changed something in your house, or your router's broken or whatever. Like, oh, you're not using the Fios router. It's like, I swear it's the tree. Like literally things are broken and on the ground. Send a truck.
I promise. Yeah. All right. Well, I have my own update. I am the happy recipient of refreshed, refurbished, replaced, repaired AirPods. So where we last left our hero, I had gone to the Apple store. I don't remember what day it was. I guess it was like Tuesday of last week. And I had said, hey, my right earbud, I keep trying to call it earbud and AirPod all at the same time. I can only say but one word at once. Bear with me, everyone.
I mean, you're not the only person who has ever jumbled these names up. Like this is everyone I've ever heard talk about these products.
It's so
Just
true.
say iTouch.
Yeah, my right eye touch, right eye touch was failing. So anyway, I went to the Apple store and explained, a listener was very kind to I didn't say a listener, but I said a friend had been very kind to send me a replacement charging case, and that doesn't seem to be working. What do I do? And he said, all right, well, we're going to put it back in the original case that it came with, because it turns out past Casey had optioned Apple Care on it, and we're going to send both AirPods, whatever they're called, jeezy peasy.
Airbud is the basketball playing dog.
Yeah, right. My bad. A great layup on that one. Anyways, we're going to send all of them up to Apple, which, as it turns out, is in Louisville, where all these repair places are, and we'll see what happens. And so I forget when it was specifically, but I think it was like late last week at like 10:30 at night. I got an email saying, hey, we have results. Here's what we found. And let me repeat to you that the right pod was the one that was not able to charge, was dead as a doornail. The case seemed fine. The left pod seemed fine. So they said, okay, here's what we found. There's water damage in the case, water damage in the left pod, water damage in the right pod. That'll be $30, please. And for a minute, I was like, what? No.
I mean, that makes sense. Like you work out in them, right?
I do. It's not terribly often, but I do. And I think there is a strong possibility that I had dropped one of the right one in water at some point, which I didn't even think about.
Wait. This seems like something you would remember. I agree. I
agree that I would remember.
You think you might have dropped them in water?
I think it is possible.
This is material information to the case.
Well, how can you do they go into glasses of water so frequently that you can't remember? That would be a notable event in my life if I dropped my AirPods into a thing of water. Do you mean like you drop them onto like a little puddle on the counter?
No, I can imagine. I can't see. Here's the thing: my own memory, my own confidence in my own memory is so bad that I have a vague recollection of perhaps one of them. I think the right one hopping into the sink, perhaps when I was taking my contacts out and cleaning them and whatnot. So there was standing water in the sink, and and grabbing it immediately. But I mean, hey, water damage is water
Wait,
damage.
it was standing what? You had plugged the sink?
Yeah, because I wear we're really going down the rabbit hole now. All right, so I wear hard contact lenses because I have a weird issue called keratoconus. And keratoconus means my eyeballs, not literally, but figuratively speaking, are shaped like American footballs. And so hard contact lenses puts a nice, regularly rounded surface in front of my eyes. And so that's how I can see. And when I have my contacts in, I have pretty good vision. Not great, but pretty good vision. And if I take my hard contacts out, I'm freaking blind. And so that means because they're hard contacts, they're not disposable like everyone thinks of when they hear contact lenses. So I have to clean them every single night. And in that process, I plug the sink because it has happened many years ago that I've whiffed as I'm like rinsing them or whatever, and down the drain they go, and I'm out $300.
Oh yeah, so you're plugging it to stop something from going down the drain, but do you then fill the sink with water?
No, it's just as in the process of rinsing them.
Got it.
The sink will fill with water.
All right. Well, so you maybe like one fell out of your ear into the sink.
Right.
It was like a half an inch of water in the bottom of it. You yanked it out real fast.
Exactly. But I mean, hey, water is water. Damage is damage.
I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter. This is another one of the things you get when you pay for AppleCare. In fact, some people wrote in to say this. Maybe it's in part of the things you put in here, but like people send them through the wash all the time. Like they're in my pocket. I sent my pants through the wash with my AirPods in them. You got AppleCare Plus, that'll be $30, new AirPods.
Yep, exactly. So they said, oh, there's all this water damage. And of course, not dissimilar from my initial reaction to the movie database starting to bill me. I was like, what? No, that's not true. That's not right. And then I thought for a beat, and I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll pay the $30 because what am I arguing this for?
And honestly, like it's those water sensors, like this is not a waterproof device. It's not a water resistant device. It's not anything. And it's got holes in it. And like, I can imagine just ear sweat being responsible for water damage in a lot of AirPods. So that's another reason to potentially get AppleCare on them if you know you're going to sweat and kill them eventually.
Oh, I think there is some water resistance to them. I think it's just not a ton.
Yeah. So one way or another, I paid my $30 pretty much immediately. I think it was Thursday or Friday. I can't recall that they said, okay, we'll ship. I think it was Thursday night. They ended up shipping on Friday, if I recall correctly. And actually surprisingly early for UPS, they arrived at my door today. The other funny thing was when I was with the Genius, who again was very kind and very helpful, the Genius was like, hey, we can ship this to your house if you want, but you're going to have to be there to sign for it. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. You're gonna have to be there to sign for it. Like, this is clearly a man who has been through some stuff with angry customers in the past, right? And I was like, no, it's fine. I work from home. It should be fine. And sure enough, the UPS came and dropped it on my front stoop and walked away. So I'm not mad at him, having erred on the side of caution, but I thought that quite funny because he made a stink about the fact that I needed to sign for it. But anyways, I was hoping against all logic that maybe they would give me not only, two new AirPods, two new earbuds, two new iTouches,
two new iPods.
But maybe I would get a USB-C case, a USB-C case that, to be completely clear, I in no way deserved. I was going to say no reasonable way. I straight up did not deserve a USB-C case, but I was hoping. I did not receive a USB-C case, which I'm sad to say.
You get one when you buy your AirPods 3.
I know.
Yeah, the era of Apple like giving you little upgrades for service, like that was occasionally the case, 15, 20 years ago.
They'll still do it if they can't get the old one.
Yeah, but Apple maintains a very strong supply chain now. So like that era is in the past.
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't expect it. I did not deserve it, but I was hoping. And so that didn't happen. So all told, this experience on the whole was good. $30 later, plus whatever the cost of the initial AppleCare was, which I truly do not remember. I have what is effectively a brand new set of AirPods. Like maybe they were repaired rather than replaced, but it looks to me like it was, a refurb or whatever. So on the whole, not bad. I feel like my in-store experience was not great, not in the sense that, the Genius was bad. Again, the Genius was great. Just that I kind of wish they would have just given me a new set or whatever, a refurb set, and let me walk out. And I have news about that. Before we get to that, though, a real-time follow-up. Someone in the chat, long form in the chat, has found footnote number 9 on the AirPods Pro 2 specs page. AirPods Pro 2 are dust, sweat, and water-resistant for non-water sports and exercise. Products, including charging case, were tested under controlled laboratory conditions and have a rating of IP54. Dust, sweat, and water resistance are not permanent conditions, and resistance might decrease as a result of normal wear. Blah, blah, blah. So I think, Marco, you just said a moment ago, to a degree, they are at least resistant, and that sounds accurate.
Yeah, like they're made to tolerate workout sweat and maybe occasionally get, if you're jogging and it's raining, stuff like that. Like they're made to tolerate that, not immersion.
Right. All right, so now feedback with regard to how I should have handled this. And I got a few different pieces of feedback, which I thought were really great. Andrew on Things writes, I ran into the same send them in requirement in store, but it wasn't a dire issue, so I held off for a bit to think about it. I called a few days later, and Apple offered to ship me new ones immediately, as long as I agreed to a temporary hold of my credit card until I sent mine back. Why this is not offered in store is beyond me. I get why they may not want to do that in store, but this was the way I should have handled it. Mark W. writes, to get my AirPods repaired, I hopped on the Apple support website, spoke to someone in chat. Okay, quick aside from Casey now. Hi, this is Casey. I looked for some mechanism by which to chat. Again, like we were talking about in the pre-show, probably user error. For the life of me, I couldn't find it, and that's why I decided I'll just go to the store, because I bet you I could do something about this via chat. I couldn't find it. Maybe it's plain as day, and I just did not see it.
It's hard to find. I've stumbled upon it a few times, but I couldn't find it if you asked me to do it right now. But it's there somewhere.
All right. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better. So anyway, back to Mark. Blah, blah, blah. Spoke to someone in chat, answered a few questions, and then just asked them for advanced replacement. And we'll put a link. A listener, Vortex, actually found the link that's specific to AirPods advanced replacement, and we'll put that in the show notes. So anyway, back to Mark. Just asked them for advanced replacement, and they set it up for me. You pay some nominal fee up front, and they ship a replacement AirPod to you the next day with a return box, and then the money is refunded when they receive your faulty unit back. I've used the advanced replacement service many times over multiple sets of products, and it's the main reason I keep buying AppleCare, because it means I never had to be without headphones. Let me tell you, this is the first worldiest of first world problems. But I went, half a week or a week without my AirPods. I knew I used my AirPods all the time. I knew they made my life, in my personal opinion, much better. I didn't realize how awful life was without my AirPods. Again, I'm being a bit hyperbolic, but holy jamolies, it was genuinely burdensome not to have my AirPods. And it was such a relief when they came back in today. So yes, this is advanced replacement or perhaps express replacement service. And again, we'll put a link in the show notes. Express replacement service is a benefit of AppleCare Plus for AirPods. With express replacement service, we'll ship you a replacement device so you don't have to wait for repair. And this service it exists for other device classes as well, not just AirPods. The link we'll put in the show notes is explicitly for AirPods, but we'll put a link, or you can find equivalent links for other things. So anyway, Anonymous writes, there are two aspects of your story that I noticed factoring into the reason why dead, and untroubleshootable AirPods need to be serviced off-site: counterfeit products and AppleCare Plus coverage. About a year or two after AirPods launched, my coworkers and I noticed a lot of fake AirPods coming in. Sure, the first few waves of them were easy to spot. The size or color was off, the case looked janky, and they generally had no serial number to identify them. Then the knockoffs got better, and soon they were in real cases with real warranty coverage. The fake but convincing AirPods won't turn on, and the next service step would be a replacement. After a while, we got more tools to identify individual AirPods, which now had individual serial numbers as well. All this to curb a cycle in which fake AirPods could be laundered into genuine working AirPods. So to conclude, no part serial does not mean no new AirPods, and thus off to the depot they go. AppleCare Plus extends the quote-unquote usefulness of a serialized case in this chain by a year. It also wouldn't be uncommon for us to see other fake Apple devices at the Genius Bar carrying real serial numbers, often with AppleCare Plus coverage attached. This blew my mind. I should have expected it. Blew my mind. And so that made me feel a little bit better about the fact that when this thing is freaking dead, and presumably they can't interrogate this AirPod to see what its serial number is, okay, maybe I am trying to pass them a fake.
But even if they can, because apparently the fakes carry legitimate serial numbers, and they don't have a way to tell whether this is the actual one that we sold with the serial number or a fake one. So I guess maybe when they send it away, they have other ways to tell whether they're legitimate, like X-raying the inside of them or something or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, dealing with counterfeits is an ongoing problem for Apple.
Yeah, and I think we don't fully appreciate, in most nerd circles, the extent to which they are, that people try to defraud them and for a profit. And this isn't just somebody, an individual trying to return used AirPods to get new ones. This is large scale operations, especially in China.
Yep.
Where the black market and organized crime is involved. It's a really huge thing of basically defrauding Apple out of trading in counterfeit copies of their devices that say they don't work to get real ones and then sell them for a profit. It's a big thing. And basically as a result of that, that's oftentimes what is behind when Apple like further locks down parts pairing and repairs and Apple Care coverage and everything, it's often to counteract whatever the latest techniques are of these people who defraud them. And so it's a whole huge cat and mouse game, most of which we aren't really aware of and don't really see, but it's going on. And so I think the problem with all of this, though, is that the result is Apple Care is just going to get worse for Apple's legitimate customers. There's not really an obvious good solution to it, except that you think you could just walk in and trade stuff in and get them replaced in person in the stores, and that's going to, be slowly eroded over time as all of these, basically scam and fraud defenses have to keep going up.
Bad people ruin stuff for everybody. I mean, but the express replacement is good because they'll still catch the fraud, presumably, because you do have to send it back and they have put a hold in your credit card. So if you send in fake ones to someplace where they can check that they're fake, you're just not going to get your money back. So it stops the counterfeiting, presumably, but also it helps you not be without AirPods for as long as Casey was. So I guess that's the best workaround we have for this unfortunate situation.
See, you all made fun of me for my initial solution of my AirPods don't last as long as a plane ride. I just bought a second pair. I am so happy that I keep 2 pairs of AirPods because now, it's if the battery is dead because I've forgotten to charge it for a while, no problem. I'll just take out the other pair. It's fine. If I accidentally leave one at the house and I'm out somewhere and I have my backpack with me, I have the other pair. No problem.
I'm wondering why Casey doesn't have a house full of old AirPods like I do.
Well, I have, so my AirPods Mark 1, if you will, I had given to Erin, and she almost never uses them. And I did that, married person thing where I was like, hey, it's really stinky. I don't have my AirPods right now, hoping that she would say, oh yeah, you could just take mine back for a little while. But that seemed a bit aggressive, even though she almost never uses them. I should be a grown-ass man who can last 5 days without my beloved AirPods. And I did, but only just.
I would.
But I mean, I could have gone to the attic and dug up some of my OG AirPods that probably would have lasted 10 minutes at a time, but that would have been better than nothing. But it just didn't seem worth the effort, especially because the attic is 1 trillion degrees right now. And then finally on the AirPods topic, a different anonymous person writes, it's not uncommon for my store to run into 5 sets or more of fake AirPods per day that we visually identify. It's unknown to me how many we send out that are later found to be non-genuine products. So here's the thing. This is what Marco was saying a moment ago. I don't want to really crack into the right to repair discussion because we've been through it. It's not useful right now. But if you look at it from Apple's perspective, a lot of the stuff that they do that gets iFixit upset, I understand, this is Marco's point, I understand why and how they got there. That doesn't make it right, but I get how they got there. And this is a very tricky problem to solve. And I had no idea how bad it was. And this anonymous person said they were in a metro area, but they didn't specify specifically where, but it sounded to me like it was a roughly Richmond-sized metro area. It was not like a Manhattan or anything like that. So I didn't realize how prevalent this was and how widespread.
I bet most of those people don't know they have fake AirPods. You know what I mean?
That's also very possible.
They just bought them online and they found a good deal on AirPods and they had no idea they were being sold counterfeit goods, and also they don't work and they bring them in. That's got to be the common case.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's back in the day, I don't know how much this is still the case, but back in the day, SD cards were very commonly counterfeited. And so I once unknowingly bought a counterfeit one on Amazon, like a counterfeit SanDisk SD card, right from Amazon, shipped from and sold from Amazon.com, like everything. And so I from that point forward, I was very careful to only ever buy SD cards from B&H because I know, they are also a very good high quality retailer and they're very strict with their supply chain. Whereas Amazon is not strict with their supply chain at all. And so you don't really know necessarily what you're getting on Amazon. And I still buy everything else on Amazon really, but the stuff where that kind of thing matters a lot and where they're highly counterfeited, I buy from more authoritative sources like B&H. I think now that Apple's products are that highly counterfeited, it's probably best for, especially something like AirPods that apparently are very easy to counterfeit. I think it's even more important than ever to buy Apple's products of those types from Apple.
That's I agree with you on paper, but have you seen the deals running on AirPods Pro 2? I think right now, actually, on Amazon, they are like $80 off.
Are they AirPods Pros too?
I mean, fair, but they're like absurdly discounted. So again, doesn't make you wrong, but woof, if it were me, it'd be hard to pass that up. Anyway, so in summary, $30 later, I have effectively new AirPods, which is great for today. But future Casey's going to be real mad when those AirPods Pro 3 come out. And I really want to upgrade. And I look at my 2-month-old AirPods Pros 2.
They're going to be your backups then.
Yeah.
When you drop the 3s in the sink.
We are sponsored this episode by DeleteMe. Right now, the headlines are chock full of data breaches and regulatory rollbacks, making us all vulnerable. But you can do something about it. DeleteMe is here to make it quick, easy, and safe to remove your personal data online from hundreds of data brokers. So here's how this works. The data broker business is kind of gross. They buy, sell, trade, accumulate as much personal data as possible on you, your family, your addresses, your phone numbers. It's really creepy. And that way, that's why if you can do a quick web search, you can find people's personal info. You can find out their phone number. You can find out their home address. It's really a creepy business. Now, you can make this a lot harder by filing opt-outs and takedowns to all these different data brokers, but there's hundreds of them, and they all have different processes. So what DeleteMe does is you sign up for DeleteMe. They have ongoing service, constantly monitoring, and they will go, and wherever they find your personal info in these hundreds of data brokers, and they're always adding more, they will file the takedowns and the opt-outs for you on your behalf. So they basically opt you out of hundreds of data brokers and always more along the way. They send you reports, regular personalized privacy reports, showing you what info they found and where and what they've removed. So it's really a great ongoing service to keep you opted out of all these broker sites as they, keep popping up. It's a great service to, make it harder to find your stuff online. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for DeleteMe. Now at a special discount for our listeners. Get 20% off your DeleteMe plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/ATP and use promo code ATP at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/ATP and enter code ATP at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/ATP, code ATP. Thanks to DeleteMe for sponsoring our show.
All right. Tell me, John, about tabs in Tahoe, please.
This is something I mentioned on the last episode, that there was a way to set a property list entry somewhere to revert the weird capsule-shaped tabs in Tahoe to be more normal-looking tabs. And I couldn't remember if it was like a global one or app-specific or whatever. But anyway, Steve Stroughton-Smith pointed me to the tweet of his that I was remembering. It is global. Its default's right, -G, which is the global specifier. The key is NS Solarium window tabs, and then you set it to a Boolean value of false, and it won't use the capsule-shaped tabs. Steve says it sets it at the app kit level, so it should affect all apps using the system tabs, but Safari does not use the system tabs, so it won't affect Safari, and that was thus the confusion about whether it was global. I just tried it in Terminal, and so the tabs look more normal, but everything is still like extremely bright white, so it doesn't change the UI back to Sequoia or anything. But if you want to try that out for as long as that option lasts, have fun. And I think the Tahoe public beta is coming soon. I think it was accidentally released to some people already, so you could at least probably try it in the public beta if it's still there.
Yeah, probably tomorrow, I would guess.
All right, low-cost Apple laptops with A18 Pros. Mandonam writes, this would not be the first A-series chip in a Mac, as there was... Oh, I forgot to bring this up. This pissed me off so much because I thought about this when we were recording, and then it completely slipped my mind to say something because we got sidetracked on talking about something else, and then I meant to circle back and never did. So anyway, Mandonam writes, this would not be the first time the A-series, or the first A-series chip in a Mac, as there was the Apple Silicon Developer Transition Kit, which used the A12Z from the iPad Pro.
I mean, technically, was that a Mac?
Yeah, I mean...
fair.
Yes. I mean, you couldn't do a ton with it, but it was a Mac.
I mean, it ran Mac OS, but it wasn't... It was called the Apple Developer Transition Kit, wasn't it? I don't remember if it had a Mac.
I believe that's
But anyway,
right.
yes, obviously, yes, there have been... You could run Mac... It's better to say you could run Mac OS on A-series chips before, but to call this a Mac, obviously it's not a Mac that people could buy in the general public, and we had to send them all back to Apple, so you didn't even get to keep them. We leased it for a little while.
So we're saying it's not a Mac, but is it a robot? Or not.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's worth noting that that was the A12Z, which was way slower than the A18, and it was fine.
Many different people had a few different things to write or to add. Perhaps the shell would be plastic instead of aluminum. I don't think that's probable, but it is certainly possible.
People have fond memories of the plastic iBooks, and especially the toilet seat ones that came in fun colors. So I think there's a lot of nostalgia for that. Apple could tap into that nostalgia and make a really good plastic MacBook, but plastic is not as good a conductor of heat as aluminum, and with today's thin and light laptops, I think a plastic one doesn't have the strength or the heat conductivity to be an option, so I'm thinking that's not particularly likely, but people really did love those colorful ones, so keep hope alive, I guess.
I mean, honestly, I think when people are hoping for a plastic MacBook, they're not thinking about the iBooks. They're thinking about the plastic MacBooks, the Intel ones from 2006 through.
Yeah, well, there was the Icebook too, like the white one. There was a whole bunch of plastic ones, not just the toilet seat.
Yeah, but like, so right at the end of the plastic era, so, when we think fondly of the plastic MacBooks, what we are thinking of is those very first gen Intel ones from 2006 and 8, and, the ones where like the handrest would like get cracked or would yellow or things like that. Well, at the very end, they still, I think it was like 2010, it was surprisingly late, they made a unibody-ish looking plastic one. It was like the cheap MacBook, product that, for businesses and education for like a year or two. And it was a different white plastic case. It was, I believe, like basically one piece or very few pieces.
Oh yeah, they did like a unibody plastic or something close to that. Yeah.
And it didn't have any of the problems that the earlier plastic ones did. It was just like it was the cheap one, and by that point, everybody else was like the entire rest of the line was using these cool metal ones, and nobody really cared about those anymore. But they could do something like that. So I think I wouldn't worry about heat because, as we learned, there are like basically like safety requirements in most countries where they can't just bond the processor to the metal body of the laptop because it gets too hot, and you can't have that on somebody's lap or touching somebody's skin.
But that's why aluminum is good, because it lets the heat spread and not concentrate in one place.
Well, but so their usual approach to heat management is like they don't just stick the processor bonded heat-wise somehow to the case. They have a heat sink on the processor and a fan blows air over it, and then there's vents on the outside.
Oh, these are surely to be fanless, right? Like, do you think the A-series Mac is going to be fanless?
Yeah, because if you look at like the low end, the MacBook Air is fanless, and that uses the M4 or whatever. But the way they do that is with an air gap. Like they basically heat up the cavity inside of it, and and hope it cools a little bit by convection. But the iPhone chip uses way less peak power than the M4, so it's definitely going to be fanless. But I think they could do a similar thing where like they're not attaching it to the case, so you don't really necessarily need the case. You just need ventilation. It can't be sealed.
Maybe you could get away with it, but it would be aluminum would be better. But here's the thing: I think people forget exactly how massive by modern standards those plastic ones were. Even the very last plastic one that you just described. Forget about the toilet seat. If you ever looked at a toilet seat, you'd be like, "Was this always this big?" Yeah, it was always that big. The Icebook that people have fond memories of, massive, huge, gigantic, way bigger than you remember. Even those old plastic MacBooks, including the black MacBook that you charged extra for, or that last unibody one, they're a lot bigger, especially on things like the screen. Like, how thick is the top lid that has the screen in it? I'm not sure you can do a top lid like that with plastic. And I don't think they're going to have an aluminum top lid and a plastic bottom. So I think plastic is extremely unlikely. Engineering-wise, it could be done, but it seems like it would be, again, at this point, more effort for Apple to figure out how to make a viable laptop in modern proportions and performance with no fan out of plastic than would for them to just use aluminum, especially if they were using an existing case.
I mean, so I think you're probably right. I think plastic is a stretch in this case because one of the big benefits of using aluminum in this case is you get a lot of rigidity for a thin case. Plastic, you don't get a lot of rigidity. So typically plastic electronics have some kind of metal frame inside of them. And, it doesn't necessarily cover the entire thing, but it's like, a frame, a skeleton basically made of metal to add rigidity in various points. So they would probably need to do something like that. And I can't imagine that would be worth the trade-off. Like, I think they would probably, if they want to have a different case construction that is cheaper, my idea that I said last time about like just not doing it unibody, having it be like in panels, I think is more likely.
Gross.
But
Gross.
But again, like keep in mind too, this is if they are going for very inexpensive, they are probably going to want to replace that Walmart $650 Mac, M1 MacBook Air. Now, one option, I believe they mentioned this on Upgrade, like one option is they could just keep using that old MacBook Air case, the teardrop shape one.
I said that on the last episode. Stop crediting Upgrade for things that I said.
Okay, so
Gracious.
so they could just keep using that case, which they are currently selling brand new in a $650 laptop. So that is possible to just keep using that at that price point. What I really hope is that they don't jack up that price point too much. That obviously, like whenever Apple has a low price point and then they introduce like a replacement, like a generational leap for that product, they almost always raise the price at first and then eventually chip it down back to that product. So hopefully that would be like if they have to go above $650 for this new one when it's brand new, hopefully then after a year or two it's right back down there or maybe even lower. I think Apple could really get a lot of great market share if they could get it, as close to that $500 point as possible. Because if you look at what is out there in PC laptops, there's a lot of options at those prices, and they're not all garbage. Like there are some decent ones that are around that price point. And again, if Apple's making that low end iPad for $300, like they can totally do this with most of those same parts. Just throw a keyboard and trackpad on there. So we know they can do it if they choose to. I really hope they do, and I think that could be a very interesting product. I don't think, though, that has to be a super cool, thin and light product. It really could just be that old MacBook Air case, or it could be, like the M2 forward MacBook Air case, like the flat one that we have now. It could just be that case with lower spec parts in it. I hope they're more creative than that, and I hope they take the opportunity, if they're going to, do something new, to really rethink a lot of those design choices to make it radically cheaper, not just $100 or $200 cheaper. But that is not necessarily the Tim Cook way. The Tim Cook way normally is you just keep selling the older one and the older one and the older one. You cut $100 off each year it goes older. Like that's the Tim Cook way, and that that goes fine for a while. But if they really want to like dig down into that price range, like get really much lower than where they are now, they need something that's designed that way from the start. So I'm still very interested to see what this product ends up being. And I think it could be really, really cool. And I think the disaster scenario for my hopes and dreams here is it's literally just the MacBook Air with an A18 instead of an M4, and it's like $200 cheaper. That I think would be the very disappointing scenario. But I hope they do more than that.
We shall see. We are getting a call that Jason says that he said it before you, John. So
I'm
Mark,
sure he did, but I didn't hear it before I recorded it in my podcast.
Oh, okay.
So again, if you're on this podcast and you're going to credit somebody with, I think I heard somebody say this, you heard me say it.
Oh, John.
I mean, in all fairness, so Upgrade comes out on Mondays. I usually make a point to listen to it before we record because we cover a lot of the same topics.
I make a point not to listen to it before we record for exactly this reason.
Well, because we cover a lot of similar topics, I try to listen to them before we record. And so chances are I did hear about it from Jason before I heard about it from you.
I know, but you heard it from me most recently, and it's most relevant to this show because it's the show that I'm on.
Oh my god!
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
It's not like a last modified thing. It doesn't matter who said it most recently. You touched it last. Okay.
Well, it's in the trying to reach back into your memory. I think recency might make it more prominent. But
oh my god!
Primacy, is that the right word? Makes it more prominent in your mind.
Moving on, gentlemen. Another piece of feedback that a lot of people sent in. Hey, maybe it'll run iPad OS instead of Mac OS. I don't want that.
That's just an iPad with a keyboard. We have those already.
Yeah, no, but that's something that we've talked about for years that a lot of people want. And the rumor mill being what it is, it's not, ridiculous to assume that maybe they got this wrong. What we're talking about is basically an iPad with a permanently attached keyboard with a hinge, like an iPad laptop. For the entire history of Apple selling various floppy or not so floppy keyboards that you attach to iPads, many people have said, I love iPad OS. I would love to use this as a laptop, but the floppy thing isn't right, and it's heavy, and it's weird, and can't they just sell me an iPad with a permanently attached keyboard and trackpad, just like, a regular laptop, only it's not a laptop, it's an iPad. I think that's a product that some people still want. I don't think enough people want it that Apple's going to make it, but this type of rumor is the type of thing that could be misconstrued by a game of telephone or whatever the other analogy. Lots of people feeling different parts of the alphabet and not knowing which part. A cheaper device with an A series processor, but I honestly think if it was an iPad, they would probably say, yeah, but it's a touchscreen, and that really, or there'd be like some kind of touchscreen Mac rumor. So for all the people out there who want an iPad with a permanently attached keyboard and trackpad, we hear you, but I think this rumor is not that, because I think if we would know if it had like a touchscreen or something.
Yeah, I don't think. And by the way, that would be the thing to call iBook if you were going to bring that name back.
Oh yeah.
But I think the reality is that the iPad, for most of the people who want that, they're already using iPads and it's basically fine. For people who want inexpensive laptops, or less expensive laptops, I should say, for people who want less expensive laptops, usually there's something about iPad OS that makes them say, no, I can't do that, or I don't want to do that. That's not what I'm looking for. So ultimately, when people want a laptop, they've already had the option to make an iPad into a laptop for many, many, many years. So all the people who are satisfied by that already have it. I think Apple could make a better version of that if they had it built in. They wouldn't need all this bulk for the case to attach to the iPad, and the weird hinge and the counterweighting and everything. Like, the experience of using an iPad with the modern Magic keyboards, I think, frankly, is terrible. Because they're so bulky. That is
true.
So thick. They're so heavy. It doubles the weight of the whole thing. And most of that is structure and apparatus that you wouldn't need if you did make a combined product that just had like a laptop base with a screen and it ran iPad OS. Like the resulting combo device, if it was made that way from the start to have a keyboard, you'd put the battery at the bottom, you'd have the thin screen, you'd make concessions that would make it far more compact and easier to mechanically operate. So it could be better, but I just don't think that the people who want to use an iPad as a laptop are so dissatisfied with the current options that this would gain Apple much market share. Whereas if you look at how many people want a laptop but don't want to pay $1,000 for it, and you can go on you can go to any store, or you can go on Amazon or whatever, and you can buy a not awful PC laptop for $500. Like, that's a pretty big potential market to expand into. So I hope Apple really addresses that to try to expand the Mac market share meaningfully, rather than if this ends up just being an iPad with a keyboard built in. Like, that's fine, but I think that's a much smaller incremental market above what they already have.
Yeah. Finally, I'm contractually obligated to bring up what a handful of people said: cellular. The A18 already knows how to talk to cell networks and cell modems.
Episodes.
I know, but still, I got to say it again, because come on.
Keep trying to manifest, as the kids say. It'll happen for us someday.
But see, we already have M4 cellular devices. They're called iPad Pros and iPad Airs. We are sponsored this episode by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create a beautiful website, to engage with your audience, and sell anything you want, from your products to your content to your time, all in one place and all on your terms. Now, Squarespace is great for both businesses and personal sites, and it all starts with design intelligence. This combines 2 decades of their design expertise with cutting-edge AI tech to unlock your strongest creative potential. Anybody can build a beautiful, more personalized website tailored to their unique needs, not looking cookie cutter, and craft a bespoke digital identity that you can use across your entire online presence, not just your website. All that starts at Squarespace. Of course, they have amazing business features too. They have invoicing, they have analytics, and these amazing payment options. So your customers, whether you're buying digital goods, physical goods, they have things like sales tax and shipping integration for physical stuff. For digital stuff, you can do things like paid PDFs, ebooks. You can have member areas. You can have paid newsletters. It's a big thing these days. Paid podcasts. There's all sorts of stuff. You can even have you can be a consultant or a trainer or something, and you can book time slots. So much is supported by Squarespace. When it's time to pay, your customers have all of their payment options supported, even things that aren't that common to see in a lot of these platforms. Things like direct debit in the US, Klarna, of course Apple Pay, even things like Afterpay, ClearPay. They're always adding more as these things get added over time to the market. And the best thing about Squarespace is it's super easy, even for non-technical people. So, you can help somebody if they come to you as the nerd in their life. You can say, I'll help you with a website. But what's even better is if you can show them Squarespace, and then you don't have to help them. It empowers them to do it themselves. Go to squarespace.com, have you or them start a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/ATP to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Squarespace.com/ATP. Start that free trial and get that 10% off. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring our show.
All right, so as we record, it was a day or two back, I think, that we heard news that Apple is suing Jon Prosser, the prolific leaker, for stealing their iOS trade secrets. Reading from The Verge, Apple has sued the well-known leaker Jon Prosser for the alleged theft of trade secrets related to iOS 26. According to the lawsuit, Apple claims that Prosser offered Michael Ramaciotti money or a future job opportunity in exchange for access to a company phone belonging to his friend Ethan Lipnick, an Apple software engineer working on iOS. Ramaciotti, I hope I'm getting that right, allegedly learned Lipnick's iPhone passcode, used quote-unquote location tracking to determine when he'd be away from home for an extended period, and then accessed the iPhone running a development version of the mobile OS. Apple says that Ramaciotti showed the software to Prosser over a video call, which Prosser recorded, shared with others, and then used to create renders of the new designs. Apple says it found out the details of what happened in April from an anonymous email from someone who claimed to have seen Prosser's recording of the call and recognized Lipnick's apartment. The company also claims to have a voice note sent by Ramaciotti to Lipnick apologizing for the incident and claiming that the subterfuge was Prosser's idea, which Lipnick in turn provided to Apple. Lipnick was fired by Apple for failing to properly follow its policies around securing unreleased software.
Wow.
Yikes.
I think when we saw these demo videos where it's like, oh, he was being smart by not showing the info he has, he's showing a recreation. So that way, whoever leaked it doesn't get in trouble because you could figure out what build they had or secret stuff in the background that you can only, you know what I mean? Like watermarking it or something.
Yep.
So that part was smart. The part that doesn't seem like it's smart is the thing that he's accused of doing, is pretty clearly outside the realm of just like, I just report things that people tell me. It's more like a sort of a conspiracy to commit a crime, which is to access a Apple employee's phone without their consent or whatever. Like, I don't know. The details are fuzzy, and I'm sure it'll be hashed out in court. But reading this whole story, I was thinking that if it was my profession to do do Apple leaks, which I think is a perfectly fine thing, like any kind of journalist, if you can get sources who are going to give you secret information and you publish it, that's fine. But I would be a lot more careful than it seems like these people were being about what is and isn't the right way to do that. Learn, I guess you live and learn. This is how people learn, but what is covered and what isn't? When do I become a criminal and when do I not? If I just accept anonymously leaked information and publish it, are there cases where that's a problem? But working with somebody to try to get, access to company secrets yourself is now you're basically like a computer criminal. You're not so much a journalist or a leaker anymore. But yeah, I bet these folks play fast and loose with that just because it's so... the desirability of getting a big scoop and the value of it is so big to them that I can see people being tempted to do things like the accusations in this case.
Yeah, when I first heard about this, my reaction was, oh, that is so gross. Here's one of the most valuable companies in the world going after a guy. And that just feels super icky to me. And then I continued to read more about what he's accused of. And obviously, maybe this is all fabrications. Maybe it's all lie. As an example, what did I read a second ago? Where is it? There claims to have a voice note sent by Ramaciotti to Lipnick apologizing for the incident and claiming the subterfuge was Prosser's idea. How convenient, right? That could be completely fabricated for all we know.
This will get hashed out in court, but there is precedent for Apple essentially shutting down leakers when they do something where they're basically the leaker is in the wrong, legally speaking, and Apple uses its weight to crush them. And that's part of, it's kind of like if a newspaper, if reporters for a newspaper hack their way into Apple and took secrets out and published them, Apple should sue them. and should win, and they shouldn't do that, right? But that's what this court case will determine. Now, obviously, any kind of court case, especially in this country, is so lopsided when one company has infinity money and the other person in the court case has essentially zero when rounded compared to how much money Apple has for lawyers. But so that part of it isn't great and fair, but hopefully we'll figure out what the truth is here eventually. It's a tough business to be in. If Apple leaks your business, there's lots of danger. And one of the dangers is the big angry tiger that is Apple that doesn't want leaks to happen. Apple is usually, I think, I'm not going to say nice, but like more hands-off than you would imagine. But if any of the facts in this case are actually as reported here, I can see Apple saying, this one we need to, Right. I'm actually the one thing I feel bad about this thing is that the employee was fired. The Lipnick was fired. Like I know, I'm sure he violated things by not properly securing blah blah blah. But if he was like duped into doing this, I don't know. Maybe they have evidence that he was not as that he actually participated in this thing. But like everyone makes mistakes. Like I don't think the guy who left the iPhone 4 in a bar, he didn't get fired, did he?
No, I don't think so. But so there's a few things there. First of all, I think I can understand how this Lipnick person got fired because clearly he left this pre-release phone, or maybe not pre-release hardware, but pre-release software in a place where other people could get to it. And his passcode was not secure enough that other people discovered it.
Well, where was the place that other people could get to it?
In his apartment, but still.
In his house?
I mean, I hear you. I do. But I mean, any Apple person I've ever spoken to that has gotten pre-release anything is kind of bananas about it, and they're supposed to be, and I've never asked for like a leak or anything like that, to be clear, but as a matter of fact, I think I told this story years ago, but after the Apple Watch was announced, and so it was public, I went to dinner or drinks or something with a friend of mine who was working on the Apple Watch. And so he was allowed to wear it out because it had already been announced or whatever. And he had his wrist or his hand on the table. And I was like, oh, wait, let me see that. And let me touch it or whatever. I just wanted to see what it felt like. And he jerked his hand back. You can't do that. Oh, okay. Sorry. I wasn't trying to be any kind of way. I didn't realize. And he was flabbergasted that I would even make a motion to just pet the outside of this watch band to see what it felt like.
It's like when I grabbed the mouse of the iMac Pro at WWDC and got scolded by an Apple person.
Yeah.
a Mac that was out in the public in a place where people could see it, but oh, you can't touch it.
Right, exactly. So, but to go back to what you were saying a moment ago, what I was starting to say, and then we got sidetracked, is that when I first heard this, it felt really gross to me. But then as I'm hearing more, and, again, we don't know what the reality is, but if you're to believe what Apple is asserting, that this was a concerted effort, a kind of conspiracy, I think you said a moment ago, to get this information out of this device and out of this employee, I don't think I'm too upset about them going after Prosser. I feel bad for him, but FAFO, man, I kind of get it. I don't know, Marco, where do you come down on this?
We don't know enough of the specifics yet to judge for sure, who's liable for what and who should be prosecuted for what or whatever. But in general, I think it's a very, very bad idea for companies to sue journalists. That's not a great idea most of the time. It is occasionally, you can occasionally have, good grounds for that. It is occasionally the right move or at least a valid move. It's a very dangerous move, and you have to be really sure what you're doing, and I think it can very easily have a chilling effect. Where I stand on what has probably happened here, I don't think there's anything wrong if somebody gives you information for you to report on it, because because look, we do that. We don't have the kind of sources that they do. We don't have really salacious, here's what the next version of iOS, nobody gives us that information and we don't ask for it. But if people tell us stuff and we talk about it on the show, it's not that far from that. You can see a world in which if Apple sues John Prosser for this and wins, if we talk about what John Prosser's videos had in them, and we say, "Oh, look, John Prosser, this YouTuber, had this report that alleges these mock-ups of what the new iOS will look like," and we talk about it, are we putting ourselves in danger by talking about it?
I think you've identified the line, which is in that scenario, we would have no participation in the extraction of this information from Apple. Someone posted it on a web page, and then we're just talking about what we saw on a public web page, right? So we're fine there.
Are we?
Prosser would be fine if he just received this information and published it. But if he was conspiring with how to break into this guy's apartment when he's not there and look at his phone without his consent, that has nothing to do with journalism. It has everything to do with, like, that's just, forget about journalism. That's just a crime, period. Like, going and go into someone's apartment and messing with their stuff when they're not there, monitoring their location to know when they're not there, and then going in and getting their stuff. That's, I mean... Again, this is a civil suit, not a criminal thing. But, you know, depending on how they executed this plan, it could actually be a criminal proceeding, or maybe they got let in by a roommate. But even if they got let in by a roommate, they're messing with other roommate stuff. But like in a civil procedure, like this looks like a conspiracy to, like, that they're participating in to get the information. If you're a journalist, you can't be planning how we're going to break into Apple's HQ and get the secrets out. You're not a journalist anymore when you do that. You're just... you know, it's just industrial espionage. You're just a criminal. You're a spy.
Yeah, so I do agree. Like, there is an obvious difference between, like, if you are paying for the information, if you are hiring people to get things for you, like, that is a different level of involvement. But we don't necessarily know if there's enough evidence that John Prosser was at that level of involvement.
This is what he's being accused of. We'll find out in court whether they have evidence.
Right. So it's too soon to say. I'm sure they had good reason to claim what they're claiming. I hope they have good reason to claim what they're claiming, because
I did see some of the evidence that's like, I can see this is going to be an interesting court case, because in one of the conversations, I think Prosser's, or whoever he was talking with, says, well, at least you'll have like plausible deniability because I did this without all your consent. I forget which way they were going, but they discussed this very issue of, like, essentially, is John Prosser part of this? Like, does he, or are his hands clean? And they had like a funny back and forth and like in a messages conversation that's in the evidence and that's submitted as part of this case.
Oh, what idiots!
And because they're debating about it, and there could be like laughing and joking and sarcasm, like, I wonder how it's going to play in court. Of like, well, no, we were just kidding about that, but I do have plausible deniability, and I didn't participate, and. Yeah, especially if, like, you know, Apple can flip one of the people around on Prosser, and they'll say, yeah, well, you know, get him to say that when he said that, I totally believed he was serious and not being sarcastic. Like, that's the tricky part about, like, you know, with text, there's always the problem of, like, is my intention coming across in text? That's why people put emojis in and stuff. And when it becomes a court exhibit, trying to explain, like, imagine having to explain in court, like, texts that you sent people that could potentially be ambiguous depending on whether you're being sarcastic or funny or joking. Ooh, I don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah, not fun. I think there was a 99PI episode. I'm not going to be able to dig it up, about like interpreting emoji in the context of legal agreements and stuff.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And I don't remember the conclusions, but it made me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, because it's like, when it's just a message thread, who cares? But like when this is potentially evidence of whether or not there was a crime committed, and it hinges on whether you knew this thing or whatever, and you make a joke about it, and it's like, but were you serious? Or was that like, did you put, if you write ha after it, or a lol, or a happy, like, which one of those things mean you're obviously kidding, and which one of those things mean you're just excited about the fact that you participated in this crime? Like, I would never want to have to argue that, or would never want my fate to hinge on the interpretation of that. You know what I mean? But I'm sure there'll be more evidence that comes out.
Oh, thanks to the Longform, who immediately found the link for the 99PI episode, which is, it's not required listening by any means, but it's worth your time if you haven't heard it. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Gruber took a look at one of the documents that was in the legal release, and it's saying, I'm not sure, this is an email, I'm not sure who to contact, but as a courtesy to the iOS 19 team at Apple, I wanted to share information that I have about an employee who leaked pre-release design details. The iOS 19 information shared by John Prosser is sourced from Ethan Lipnick, blah, 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 and they have some redacted names that Gruber has done what appears to be a crack job, of really bang up job of filling in who he thinks these names are. So this is the aforementioned Ramasiati, Ian Zelbo, Joe Rosignol, and Michael Burkhart as are all listed potentially in the redacted sections of this note.
Yeah, Joe Rossignol is from Mac Rumors, right?
Shoot, I should know this, and I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah,
now.
I've seen his name 1,000 times.
Yeah, those other names don't ring any bells for me, but obviously Gruber knows them. What he was doing, but this looks like one of those things where someone failed to redact a PDF, like they just put a black box over the letters, but when you could select, you know what I mean? But that's not the case. I think they did correctly redact it, and what Gruber was doing was simply matching the font and size and then typing in letters in the same font and size, seeing what names would fit. Now, obviously, there's tons of names that would fit in those spaces, but presumably Gruber knows that these names are actually relevant to this particular case, and it's a big coincidence if these are not the names that fit in there. But we'll find out. He also put a card down saying that he has a theory about who the tipster is. Like who sent this email to Apple, and he did his usual thing where he puts an MD5 hash of his prediction, and we'll find out in the future if he was right.
Do you think John Gruber will be the last person to use MD5?
I don't know. I use it constantly. Truly,
still works fine for this purpose. Like, it annoys me that Apple deprecated the APIs on macOS because I use them as part of Hyperspace. I'm not using them for cryptographic purposes. I'm using them for other purposes, and I don't care that they're easily cracked or whatever. It's not, when you're not using them cryptographically, I wish the way I could turn off that warning and say, I know, I'm not using it for cryptography. It's fine.
Do you think somebody's going to rainbow table attack John Gruber's tweets about it?
Gruber seems to think it's harder because he does a full sentence and not a word. But yeah, someone with a big farm of GPUs probably could crack this if they wanted, but I don't think it's worthwhile. We'll find out soon enough.
All right. Let's talk about some news from a couple of weeks ago now, actually almost a month ago. Cloudflare has announced that in certain circumstances, they will be blocking AI crawlers by default. And so they have a marketing page blog post about this, and then they also have a news release from the blog post. For nearly 30 years, the deal that Google made with content creators was simple. Let us copy your content for search, and we'll send you traffic. But search is now declining in favor of AI, and AI doesn't reward content creators the way that search did. Instead of being a fair trade, the web is being strip mined by AI crawlers, with content creators seeing almost no traffic and therefore almost no value. That changes today, July 1, what we're calling Content Independence Day. Cloudflare, along with the majority of the world's leading publishers and AI companies, is changing the default to block AI crawlers unless they pay creators for their content. That content is the fuel that powers AI engines, and so it's only fair that content creators are compensated directly for it.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this because this sounds like Cloudflare is being a hero, and I'm sure they have their hearts in the right place. But
both of those things you said were not my initial reaction to this. But continue.
Good, okay, yeah, because this sat very badly with me. So, the situation is that yes, the kind of implicit deal between web search engines and kind of the ability to publicly crawl websites and publishers, that deal no longer holds in the world of AI. That is true, and that radically changes the dynamics of bots crawling websites. But the problem is that's going to radically change the dynamics of any ability for any software to automatically fetch the contents of a website. Now, you might think, oh, who cares? that's no big deal. But I can't think of any major app I've written that hasn't needed to do that. Tumblr did that for its ill-advised RSS importing feature. RSS itself is something on a website that is hosted by the website, and if you proxy your website behind Cloudflare, that includes your RSS feed. So RSS readers, will run into this problem if your site is too aggressively blocked from Cloudflare. And podcast apps definitely do it. Instapaper certainly needs to do it.
But RSS readers and podcast clients wouldn't fall under the category of, quote, AI companies, right?
Well, so here's the thing. When Cloudflare protects you from things online, they protect you from what they feel is bot traffic in whatever threshold they are or whatever heuristic they're running as this is suspicious, or this might be an attack, or this might be scraping all of your content. But what if you just have a bunch of people hitting your RSS feed? What if there's Overcast servers? For a while I had this problem where Overcast crawls millions of RSS feeds every day from 6 IP addresses. I ran into this problem a couple of years ago where Cloudflare was starting to throttle my requests, but of course they wouldn't tell anybody. They certainly wouldn't tell the website owners. The website owners wouldn't have any idea what was going on, and so for a lot of the results would just be oh, Overcast just can't read these feeds that everyone else can read. And it took me months. They had some kind of good bot registration program where you could like register to be a good bot and you could bypass some of these limitations. And it took months for me to get through that. Eventually, I was able to find the right people, and eventually I got it through. But when people put their website behind Cloudflare, I don't think they necessarily understand all the technical ramifications of what they're doing. And, potentially blocking things like, oh, we have this RSS feed or we have our podcast feed, and we're going to block a whole bunch of apps from accessing it accidentally. I don't think they intend for that necessarily or understand what they're doing with that. So what's very, very important are what Cloudflare does by default and how Cloudflare brands what they do in the user interface. Because what happens a lot is, again, people will think they're going to, I'll block attacks to my site. Sure. Or, I'll make my CDN cost cheaper by putting this in front of it. Great. And they don't realize what they're doing is, causing a lot of problems for smaller apps. And so when I first read this, it was kind of unclear. Fortunately, it was not as bad as I expected. It was kind of unclear. It seemed like they were turning on AI crawl blocking across their entire network by default. That is not the case. They're doing it only for newly registered domains, and apparently it's going to be part of the onboarding flow where you are asked, do you want to block these or not? But they're not retroactively changing it for their entire network, which is good because one thing they brag about in their press release is that Cloudflare proxies 20% of the web. Okay, so think about the amount of power they have. And again, I can tell you from running an app that crawls a bunch of feeds from a bunch of websites, Cloudflare is everywhere. We use it too. We use it on ATP.fm. I use it for Overcast. Like, it's everywhere. And the reason why I use it is not for attack throttling. It's because it's a really cheap CDN. It's a very, very cheap, and that's why a lot of people use it. Cloudflare has a lot of power on the web. And what they just did was show us that. And if they actually did go a very, very small step further and turn this on for all of the domains by default and not require an opt-in on all old ones, they would be able to cut off crawling for tons of different apps from 20% of the web in one move. Now, the web works best when the power is not that concentrated. That was the whole point of the design of the web. If you accumulate a whole bunch of power over the web, the best thing you can do is shut up about it. Never draw attention to yourself or how much power you have. And definitely never overreach in a way that draws a lot of attention to the amount of power you have. And you can look at, some various events over the last few years that show this. Even I would say this even possibly applies to Apple's controversial CSAM scanning plan, where it's like, oh, we're just going to do this on all your phones. What? But you can also, Apple certainly gets it with any controversial App Store rejections, where it's like, oh, you can just declare an entire business won't exist, and it just won't. That's a lot of power. Let's look at that. But and with the web, you can see whenever it was last year, 2 years ago, when Google started invading pages that they have their login integration with by putting the huge overlays saying log in with your Google account right over the page.
Ugh.
They just turned that on one day. There was no checking with people. There was no consideration that you're literally just going to turn your little login embed into a giant thing that plasters over the page across thousands or millions of websites. Google just did that. They just turned that on because they felt like it and they wanted to juice their numbers or whatever justification they came up for it. They just did that. And that showed, oh my God, they have way too much power here. Ooh, you could also, more recently, I think, obviously the WordPress drama with Matt Mullenweg and that whole thing, it's oh, he has a lot of power over a lot of the web. Maybe we should change that. And you can even, I would even look at in the current political atmosphere, the US has a lot of power over a lot of the web and a lot of the infrastructure around the web. And a lot of other countries have been we used to be able to trust that. Now we can't. Let's start, reducing that power. Let's start diversifying and, taking control of our own stuff. Cloudflare has that level of power now. I would say Cloudflare has a level of power similar to the United States in terms of power over the internet. It is a huge entity. It controls a huge amount of traffic. That makes me very uncomfortable. A small group of people now, a very small group of people, can now make decisions that can impact huge swaths of how the web and how the internet and how internet-connected applications work. I really don't like that. And that makes me very uneasy. They shouldn't have as much power as they do. And they just showed us how they could wield it in ways that, they're a giant stepping around and who knows what they're going to step on next. They came very close to stepping on something really big here, and they don't seem like they noticed or cared or thought it was that big or thought it could be a problem. And ultimately where we're heading with this, and this is not, Cloudflare alone, this is kind of a problem with the rise of AI and the destruction of the search trade-offs, as we were saying earlier, but where we're heading with this is the web used to be a place where anybody could really build anything or publish anything or build something that read things that were published and process them and different web apps to read RSS feeds and stuff like that, or parse page content or whatever. We are heading to a point very rapidly now where that's going to be over. That's going to be shut down. You're going to have huge swaths of the web blocking crawling from anything. Google search index maybe, but it could block crawling from any of the web apps you use. If you use something like IFTTT or Zapier, or use some kind of automation, your own curl scripts on your Mac. Not to mention, of course, things like RSS readers and podcast apps, but so many automations and automation apps and apps that parse data off a website to do something, make a widget or something. We're in an era now where those are all significantly at risk of not working anymore, because everyone's going to start locking down their content and putting things like Cloudflare's JavaScript thing in front of it. And so it's going to be harder and harder to make anything that interoperates with any of the rest of the web. And what that's going to do is make it much harder for small projects and small companies and small developers to get their stuff off the ground and to have their stuff work. Because the big companies, they'll make deals. The big companies will be fine. Google will be fine. They will make deals with everybody. It'll work out fine for them. But people like us are at risk, and the tools that we use, the tools we make, the businesses we run, the apps that we make, the apps that we use, those are all at risk as these giants stomp all over the internet. And I really am feeling very uneasy about all of that.
It's funny. I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, so part of my Docker swarm, not in a literal sense. I think that's a technical term in some context, but my array of Docker containers, one of them is this open source project, changedetection.io. And I'll put a link in the show notes. I think I've talked about this once or twice recently. And what this lets you do is it will periodically go and look at some web page, maybe because you're trying to get an alert for, if the TS5 Plus is in stock at CalDigit's website, which is one of the times I most recently used this. And it'll ping that website every minute, every 10 minutes, every hour, every 10 hours, whatever you want, and send a little alert when it changes. And it even is smart in most cases with regard to stock. And it'll actually parse out and realize, it's in stock, and send me a little, push using pushover or what have you. I love this thing, and I use it for cases where I don't have, a website doesn't have an RSS feed. And I've noticed in the last month or so, and I never put it together until I heard you talking, despite having read about this, a few days ago. In the last month or so, I've been getting a lot of 403 errors on things that I crawl. And they're not critical. It's not the end of the earth. But silly things that I'd like to know when they're updated, I'm getting 403s. And I was working on earlier today, actually, trying to find a way to get around that. And a lot of people have said that the Cloudflare, are you a robot? Yes or no? That checkbox that I guess occasionally will give you a CAPTCHA, but I almost never see that could be causing the problem. And there's some people that have developed some workarounds that seem to not really work, which from Cloudflare's perspective is great. But for me, as just a little, dorky home labber, that sucks. I want to be able to very gingerly and lightly crawl these things. And apparently they can detect that a headless instance of Chrome is going after these things, and they deny me. And that stinks. Is it a big deal in my personal case? No, it's nothing like what Marco was talking about, but it still sucks, man. And I kind of hate it. And maybe this isn't the same thing. Maybe I'm conflating two very, very different events, but
it's exactly the same thing, just a smaller scale.
And that just shows the problems that Cloudflare creates by having so much power over so much of the web. Like when I was first running into the problems crawling podcast feeds, I would email some of the big publishers and be like, hey, just so you know, Overcast can't crawl your site because of what you're saying. And I would go to this settings, the settings you'd have to go to would basically be like turn off all protection. Like it was all scary and nobody would ever do it. And thank God I was able to get registered as like an okay bot. But again, it took me months. And maybe I was only able to do it because I was so, bothersome to Cloudflare's people, and maybe because I already had an app that had a good number of users. If I was just a nobody starting fresh today, could I do that? Probably not. I fear that the era of the web is just collapsing in so many ways. Like, it felt like it would be forever. It felt like it would be our entire lives, where the web would be a healthy, functioning place the way we always knew it. And I think it's very much not already in lots of ways, and it's just going to keep getting locked down more and more. The last thing the web needs right now is to be made worse. The web is struggling in a lot of ways. Content on the web is struggling. Economics on the web are struggling, again, largely because of AI, but also because social networks and different pressures and different competition from video and stuff like that. Like there's a lot going on. The only thing worse than publishing on the web right now is reading on the web. It's really quite terrible on so many levels. But the advantage of the web is that it is much more interconnectable, and you can build upon it in ways that you can't build upon the app platforms nearly as openly or nearly as flexibly. You can build things like browser plugins that will interact with other people's web pages. Like there's different things. You can have service backends and crawl people's APIs and process them, like you were just saying. There's ways you can build things on the web that are simply impossible to do in the world of native apps, especially on phones. Like they're so locked down and isolated, and that is getting eroded. And when you look at what Cloudflare can do now, what they are already doing with their like little bot redirects, like you were just saying, and then now when they do something like start blocking AI crawlers by default, like that's dangerous. That can really start stomping on lots of things. That's why we're here on the web. We're here, like the reason we do things on the web instead of in native apps is to have that kind of reach and flexibility and power. And if that starts getting locked down, where you have to be a big company negotiating with everybody to get your stuff to work at all with anybody else's stuff, the web is dead. That's killing what the web is. So I really am, I'm fearful for the web, and I find myself mourning what we have lost and hoping that we can somehow preserve what's left and maybe get some of that back. But I don't yet see a path forward to do that.
You should probably be more scared of Google than Cloudflare. But the good thing about all of this is that because the web is a platform that nobody owns, even Google, technically.
They don't think that.
There is an avenue to essentially like if the currently somewhat benevolent, somewhat dictators, like the big companies like Cloudflare, for example, like they're big enough that they can cause a big problem. If they start causing a big problem and like the big companies need to make deals with them or whatever, it is actually technically possible to kind of like what you were saying with like the EU and everybody doing when they're seeing that Apple is no longer, the US is no longer a trustworthy actor. You have the ability to go off and splinter and say, okay, but we over here are going to do our thing based on these same technologies. Obviously, there are things that big companies that can do to thwart that. In particular, if you control, let's say, the world's most popular web browser or the world's most popular search engine, there's a lot of things you can do to thwart that. But technically speaking, we do have a little bit of an out there, and it is a somewhat competitive market. Cloudflare is not the only company that does what it does. So if it does something bad, in theory, its competitors could take advantage of it and yada, yada. But anyway, all that said, when I saw this story briefly go by, immediately what I thought of is, Cloudflare saying that they're going to, they're presenting this as we're a tool that empowers people with websites to do things they couldn't do on their own, like withstand a DDoS attack and deal with bots and stuff like that. And we're saying here, creators who are on the web, we're giving you this new tool. We've heard that some of you don't like these AI crawlers taking your stuff and using it for their training. And it's difficult for you to figure out how to stop that because it's not like things on the web have a trustworthy way to identify themselves. That's what you were getting at before. It's like you can say in these things, we'll block AI crawlers, but what does that even mean, right? It's not the type of thing that an individual small web developer has any chance of being able to to do. How do I stop web AI crawlers? Well, you can't. It's a really hard problem, and Cloudflare is this big, powerful company with tons of money. Let them take a crack at it. You already pay them for your CDN or whatever. Here's a checkbox you can check. We'll block AI crawlers. And this is a tool that you, the website owner, you are empowered to do this for your website if you choose to. And we're giving you that tool. And isn't this the relationship you want? We're being a good company by empowering creators. And I looked at it as saying, what you're doing, Cloudflare, is constructing a situation such that if that you are the middle party that gets paid to allow AI crawlers to access websites. You know what I mean? That's basically what you were saying, Marco, is like, okay, if people enter into the situation and check the checkbox, what they're checking is saying, I now allow Cloudflare to decide what is and isn't a legitimate crawl. That's always what they're doing. But you assume that Cloudflare is benevolent and is actually deciding what is and isn't legitimate crawler according to your understanding of that checkbox. So they'll block the AI crawlers. Oh, but what if OpenAI says, hey, we'll make a deal with you, Cloudflare, and we'll pay you $1 jillion if you put us on the allow list. And so now we're not counted as one of those bad AI crawlers.
Mm-hmm. That's obviously the very first thing that will happen.
Yeah, Cloudflare, wouldn't it be great if instead of AI companies getting to crawl all that content for free, instead they all had to pay Cloudflare? And yeah, that'd be great. Anyway, this is like the worst case type of scenario, right? We're presuming that Cloudflare wouldn't do this because part of their whole reputation and value proposition is that they are the defenders of the open web and all the things that you were talking about, Marco, or whatever. But like, it's always dangerous to be in a situation where you're relying on the good graces of a very powerful company. We talk about that all the time with Apple and podcasts. Like if Apple sort of turned bad on podcasts, they could do tons of damage. So far, so good. They haven't, fingers crossed. But that's a terrible situation to be in. Don't rely on like the kindness of giant companies with huge amounts of power. And I'm not, I think for the current leadership of Cloudflare probably has good intentions with this, like most of the things they do, as evidenced by how they're rolling it out. But you're one bad CEO away from all of this turning in a second, which is why structurally it's a bad place to be. Even if reality-wise you could say, oh, it's fine, everybody's doing the right thing, this is actually a good move or whatever. But like, I don't want to be one bad CEO away from 20% of the web getting a man in the middle, collecting money in exchange for allowing AI crawl. Like it's not a good situation. So again, I take some solace in the fact that the technologies involved in the web and the way that those technologies evolve and already exist allows for some routing around of this. And it does require, for a real doomsday scenario, it would require multiple ones of these big companies to sort of cooperate in a sort of pact of evil where Google agrees to change Chrome in a certain way and Cloudflare agrees to do this and so on and so forth. And historically, those big companies have been more at odds at each other than willing to do that. So I think the web in the end will probably be okay just because as it gets damaged and changes and morphs over time, it still finds a way, like weeds in your yard, to just find a new place to grow. But I would feel much more comfortable if we had a little bit more diversity than we do now. And how big is too big? Is 20% of the web too big? What is WordPress? What percentage of websites in the web run WordPress? It's some other big number,
like 45 or something.
Yeah, that's probably also too big, or at least too big to have any single person be able to influence that 40% in the way that we had seen was possible, right? And again, I'm heartened by the reaction to that, which is like everyone's like, we don't want this to ever happen again. So let's start figuring out how we can remove this single point of failure, single point of control. We don't want that to be the case. And again, with Cloudflare, if they start sort of turning the screws or trying to turn on the money faucet, I would hope the reaction of everybody would be similar. So I have a lot of, I spent my entire career as a web developer. I have a lot of faith in the resilience of the web just because I've seen how it has gone in cycles from being screwed up and then coming back and being screwed up and then coming back. But yeah, when I see structures like this, and like you said, Marco, like this brings attention to it. It was always the case. This is not like this is news. We've known Cloudflare is big, but as long as they're just sitting there and not doing anything, you don't think about it too much. But when they do stuff like this, everyone's head comes up like little prairie dogs, huh? Because it's like, they're like, again with Apple Podcasts, I hope they never do anything to make us think they're going to do something bad. But it would be better if this much power wasn't concentrated in this few people. I think this is a general lesson of history and humanity. Don't concentrate too much power in the hands of too few people. That never goes well. Even if it looks like it's going well for decades or centuries, it always ends badly. And it is better to more widely distribute that power, let's say.
All right, thank you to our sponsors, Squarespace and DeleteMe, and thanks to our members who support us directly. You can join us at atp.fm/join. One of the perks of membership is ATP Overtime, our weekly bonus topic, plus all of the other member-exclusive and bonus content we do over the rest of the year. Overtime is every episode. You get a bonus topic every episode. This week on Overtime, we're talking about, is copying Apple hardware a good idea? In the context of some new Pro Display XDR options. So we're going to talk about that in Overtime. You will hear that if you join atp.fm/join. Thank you so much, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.
Now the show is over. They didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research. Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Mastodon, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
All right, so we have in the internal show notes the following for an after show. Marco solved sunscreen.
I know what it is.
You do?
Hats.
European sunscreen that has that chemical we're not allowed to use.
I just bought a new sun hat, so it's top of mind for me.
Oh, wait, before you go any further, please send me the link for that. Partially because I am interested in it for myself.
You want a link to the hat I bought?
Yes, partially because I'm interested in getting a sun hat, but mostly because the entire internet will ask for that link.
Me being me, I bought two of them because I didn't know which one I would like better. But anyway, I'll send you them both.
Yes, please.
Oh, my God. Okay. No, Casey wins. So
all right.
All right. So I, for a long time, have had a huge amount of trouble trying to get a sunscreen that doesn't burn my eyes. Now, you might think, why don't you just not put sunscreen in your eyes?
That's spoken like someone who has never been to the beach.
Right. And I thought, great idea. And so I have been so diligent, trying not to wipe my arm on my face or things like that. Tried wiping with handkerchiefs and.
Have you tried not sweating, Marco?
Right. Yeah. The problem is sweat and gravity. So I've just had a problem for years that sunscreen just always finds a way to burn my eyes, even if I don't even have it on my face. Even if it's just on my ears and neck and stuff. Somehow, if I make one little mistake, if I touch something and I touch somehow a little bit, and then my eyes are burning for hours afterwards. First I was like, okay, mineral sunscreen was the obvious solution. The way sunscreens work is they either have chemicals that absorb into your skin that themselves absorb UV rays so that they don't burn you. Those are called chemical sunscreens. Mineral sunscreens basically are lotions that contain very fine metallic particles, usually zinc or titanium dioxide, and they basically reflect the sun off your skin as a physical barrier that literally just reflects it off. They both have ups and downs. The main downside of mineral sunscreens, which is what I've been using more recently, is, first of all, because it's just putting metallic powder on you, it has to kind of stay a little bit goopy forever. Because otherwise the powder would just fall off of you. So you kind of are a little bit tacky all day long. If you have it on your arms and you lean your elbow on a desk, you slide off. It's that kind of...
That does not sound enjoyable.
Don't forget about leaving that sunscreen all over the interior of your car, your armrest. It's terrible.
Yeah. So anything you touch, I made the mistake of putting sunscreen on my arms and neck and stuff, mineral sunscreen, and then a few minutes later putting a shirt on. of course, it gets all over the shirt in the process of putting the shirt on. It's like, okay, that shirt's ruined. Next, and certainly if you like go into your car and you put your arm on the armrest in the car, you're gonna have a big stripe of white, goop.
And here's the thing, just for people thinking about this, I know a lot of people put this on their small children. If you put this stuff, physical sunscreen, like physically block sun,
mineral sunscreen.
If you put this on your children and let them loose in the backseat of your car, you will never get it clean.
Oh, no.
It is really hard to get. I'm telling you from experience, it's really hard to get this off of like the interior, like the door cards. I don't know if you like the stuff that's on the door, that plastic material. Even if you don't have a fancy car, if you just have a cheap car and it's plastic, you think, anything comes off plastic real easy. Not this stuff. It's a problem.
Oh, and also mineral sunscreen, it doesn't burn my eyes, but because it is a bunch of metallic powder, it does occasionally just get in my eyes, and then it feels like you have dust in your eyes. Like, it's also not great. There are advantages, like it is like reef safe if you are swimming somewhere that requires reef safe sunscreen, like most of Australia. There's a reason why it's out there and it's good for that, but like it's a pretty big set of trade-offs.
Yeah, and people who don't go to the beach a lot, the one place you may have seen this in pop culture is if you ever see something on TV or movies and they show a lifeguard with a big white stripe down their nose. That is the most extreme case of physically blocking sun from getting into your nose by putting an opaque white substance on. Obviously, you're not entirely covering your body like you're a French mime or something with white stuff, but like that's the extreme case of this. And seeing what little kids with this stuff on their body do to the backseat, you would think their entire body was like the strip that you see on the nose of a lifeguard.
Yeah, and they are. I mean, to be clear, like you do get very white with mineral sunscreen, like because it is just coating you with white dust. And there are tinted ones that like they're mostly used if you're going to be if you're trying to like use it as like a foundation on your face and you're going to be putting makeup over it. They have like skin tone tinted mineral sunscreens that come in various shades of brown and tan and stuff. But they all have the same trade-offs of like you're leaving dust all over everything. It's not great. And I was thinking, like, when I was a kid, I had sunscreen all the time in the summer, and I never remember it burning my eyes. Like, what was different back then?
Maybe it was just mayonnaise.
Wow.
You are from Ohio. I mean, little kids, their sun is young. Their cells reproduce quickly.
I spent every summer in New York. Anyway, which Casey knows.
Yep.
Well, then you should have been covering yourself with mosquito repellent.
I mean, we were also doing that, to be clear.
You know what the best sunscreen in the world is? Crisco. Because when you start to sizzle, you move your ass. Lewis Black for you.
So, what happened is in the late 90s, we started getting chemicals to do full spectrum blocking, because the original chemicals when we were growing up in the 90s and 80s, those chemicals didn't block UVA. They only blocked UVB. And once we learned that UVA was also bad and worth blocking, we had to develop new chemicals. And the only chemical in the U.S. that is authorized by the FDA to block UVA and UVB is avobenzone. Sunscreens when we were kids didn't contain this. Well, avobenzone is now in every U.S. chemical sunscreen. The only sunscreens in the U.S. that don't contain it are the all-mineral ones. So, avobenzone is very effective at blocking UVA and UVB, but is known to cause severe eye irritation in lots of people. And so, sure, and this is why, and I went through I must have, especially at the beach house, I have 10 different brands of sunscreens. As I've tried to find it.
When you were doing this, you didn't I figured your first YouTube search would have thrown Korean sunscreen in your face. That didn't come up in your searches when you're buying 10 US only sunscreens?
Well, I didn't realize there was a difference.
But did you Google for it once? I'm constantly getting anyway, maybe my algorithm is different than yours, but I don't even have an interest in these things. And I have literally watched. Anyway, go on. I'm surprised that you were able to find and purchase 10 US sunscreens without having non-US sunscreens thrown in your face by every algorithm on the entire internet.
Yeah. I mean, because most of where I was looking was stores and Amazon. However, the second I involved ChatGPT.
You could just use Google and you would have the same thing. Or YouTube.
What? Yeah, but it would have taken a lot longer.
No, you could have just written sunscreen eye sting. Return.
As soon as I involved ChatGPT, I very quickly found out, here, I said something like, my eyes burn with sunscreen. What should I do? What are my options? And it gave me the whole readout of all the different chemicals and what they do and why they're there and what are the trade-offs. And they said, oh, and by the way, other countries, including countries with very strong regulatory agencies like the EU and Japan, I know the EU's not a country, forgive me, like EU and Japan, like, oh, they have strong regulatory agencies and they allow more chemicals than the U.S. does. Apparently, the process of getting them approved in the U.S. for sunscreen is apparently onerous and burdensome and terrible, and so nobody can ever really get new ones approved. But other countries have solved this problem with newer chemicals that have chemical sunscreen and therefore none of the downsides of mineral sunscreens, but chemicals that just don't sting your eyes. And so I'm like, okay, well, how do I acquire chemicals? These, obviously Amazon doesn't have them. I'm like, well, if only there were some kind of electronic bay that would include things from other countries.
Are you sure Amazon doesn't have them? I can imagine you could find them.
Oh, I've looked.
But they probably do.
I mean, maybe.
Although whether you get that or a thing full of Crisco is up in the air, like the AirPods.
Right. And B&H does not sell international sunscreen, unfortunately. But I went on eBay and I found a couple of recommendations from my glorious ChatGPT research. Yes, John, that's right. And I got 2 recommendations, or I got 3 different options delivered over the last week, and I've been using them every day. Like different, like, oh, I'll try, option A on my legs, option B on my arms, that kind of, and like doing all these tests. I have had 0 irritation. None. It's night and day difference, to the point where now I'm actually like wearing sunscreen more, which most of us really should. I'm wearing sunscreen more now because all of those downsides are gone. And I also thought, like, if I'm going to be ordering like sunscreen from, the EU or Japan or something, like it's going to take weeks to get here or whatever. Nope. There are like US sellers on eBay that have huge stocks of these. It says, more than 10 available, like that, that kind of eBay seller. And you can just buy like 4 of them if you want. Who cares? Like, I have solved it. The US, I assumed we would have the same option as everyone else. I was so wrong. And I will put in the show notes the link to my 2 favorite ones. One of them is, forgive me, La Roche-Posay. It's like this fancy French, I think, brand. They have one, the UV Mune 400, and that one is fragrance-free, which is nice. It's expensive, though, because these are European, so they're tiny and expensive. And then my overall favorite is Skin Aqua Super Moisture UV Gel from Japan. I'll put them both in the show notes. That runs about $20 a bottle, and it's totally fine. Like, it just works.
$20 a bottle, a little steep.
Yeah, but okay, it's Japanese sunscreen that I'm importing through an eBay seller. Like, give me a break.
I got some Japanese toothpaste that way to try it. I wasn't a fan. I'll put a link in the show notes to one of the things that I just pulled out of my YouTube history about Australian sunscreen, which also has lots of, as with all of these things for the many years that they've been bouncing around, like you'll see TikToks about them and everything. It's always like the sunscreen that they don't want you to know about. And this YouTuber is taking advantage of the same fad or whatever, but actually goes into a little bit of detail and did kind of a unscientific personal test with different kinds. But they do go into most of the things you just described about the UVA versus UVB and reef safe and SPF levels and all the myths and the realities of, like, because what you'll see very often is, like, in Australia, they have the real sunscreen that works better. This isn't so much about eye stinging. It's about, like, a US sunscreen isn't actually blocking the sun, but because Australia, there's so much sun, they have much better sunscreen than we have, and we can't get the good Australian sunscreen here. And anyway, this is a pretty good video.
Is that just Blue Lizard?
It's a long video about it, but it includes lots of details. And part of it is what you said, like our regulations are crappy. It's the same reason we couldn't have matrix LED headlights for so long, although that's finally changing. Like, we're not great at regulations and those things. But part of it is also that there are actually different trade-offs with the different chemicals they use, and every country has their own thing that they're super paranoid about and their own things that they don't care about. And then I would say that on this whole topic of, like, buying, it's not a healthcare product, but, like, buying anything that's going to be, like, rubbed onto your skin from, like, eBay or a sketchy Amazon seller or whatever, there's always some inherent risk there. I mean, there's risk buying, American sunscreen as well, but, like, it depends on how much you care about the eye stinging versus wearing a hat versus not going outside versus all those other things. So of course, $20 a bottle is also a bit of a deterrent. So, this obviously what we should have here, like with the Matrix LED headlights, is we should change our regulations to allow these things in the US and solve this problem, because I'm sure US manufacturers would love to sell us a new kind of sunscreen that they can advertise as not stinging your eyes, because they all would advertise that, and presumably they would sell it for less than $20 a bottle. But in the meantime, if you're desperate, lots of other countries have it. You can find it in various places. Did you check Canada? That might be easier than getting it from Japan. Like maybe you can find some way to get it from Canada through somewhat shady means that will cost you less money than $20 a bottle.
Well, I mean, obviously, at first I was just buying on eBay just to try it out, but I was like, it wasn't that big of a deal because these are coming from, like, the Japanese one came from Long Island. The French one came from Columbus, Ohio, where I'm from. So it's like, this is all, like, it arrived in like 2 days. Like, so it's not really a hassle to buy it on, like, when you think about eBay, like, yeah, eBay has, randos like me occasionally selling some weird thing, but like most sellers on eBay now are like professional sellers. Like it's not that different from Amazon, really. Like Amazon is a collection of a whole bunch of third-party sellers. So is eBay, and it's many of the same people. So it's not like eBay has grown a lot from where it started, and it's now just kind of a general purpose shopping site in addition to auctions.
Did any of your sunscreen smell like cigarettes?
No, it's super professional. Like everything.
That's my main fear with eBay, is that everything I buy on eBay will smell like cigarettes. I've been having good luck. I've been buying lots of mice to try to deal with my mouse situation. None of them smell like cigarettes so far, so I'm doing good.
Yeah, cigarettes are cats. That's the other one.
Yeah, I avoided one of them because it had some minor yellowing. I'm like, I know what that is.
Yeah. But yeah, honestly, I could say like getting it, like, You're right. Obviously, there are risks with buying stuff from, unknown sources, but like, is Healthy Center 84 on eBay that much less credible than whatever the hell goes into Amazon's warehouses? Like, I don't know. I don't think it's that different, to be honest. When you look at the overall risk profile of like, I have not been wearing sunscreen most days, even in the summer, even when it's bright outside.
I was going to say that when you said, when we were growing up in the 80s and 90s, this is the sunscreen we use. Well, we grew up in the 70s. The sunscreen we used was none.
Right. But like, like the copper tone that I grew up using, like it was not using avobenzone. It was, using whatever, weird chemicals came before that. And they might have had downsides, but they didn't burn my eyes. So I would use sunscreen. Whereas, in the modern era, I almost never wear sunscreen because I hate it so much, because it's either I burn my eyes or I cover everything in dust and feel goopy all day, and I can't even cross my legs because they slide apart. Like there's so many trade-offs with mineral and everything else. Like, so if it makes a difference whether you're going to wear sunscreen or not, then you're also greatly reducing a lot of risks on that end. So I'm choosing to take the risk of Healthy Center 84 on eBay instead of skin cancer.
I'm interested in your idea that it doesn't sting some people's eyes. Doesn't that chemical sting all human eyes? Like, is there some person out there who's like, no, it doesn't bother my eyes at all? Like,
if it bothered everyone else as much as it bothered me, I don't know why anybody would ever wear sunscreen.
I mean, it's like the soap tasting cilantro thing, or whether it's true or myth or whatever. But like, I can't imagine sunscreen with this chemical going into someone's eye and them not noticing it. But maybe, everyone thinks their own experience is the same. Like I am very familiar with the eye sting of which you speak. If you want to avoid it, be very diligent about not sweating through your eyebrows and rewashing and reapplying, or wear a hat on your head and sunscreen everywhere else, or find some eBay sunscreen.
Even the diligence isn't always enough, because these chemicals migrate. They actually, they can move across your skin. Like, it's you just can't have it anywhere near your face. Like, that's why it's just, oh my God, the rest of the world has this solved. Like, the answer is not avobenzone. That's the answer.
My eyebrow mopping usually works for me.